press release issued by SAG, reported on by Variety magazine. And by the way, one typical aspect of this piece by Variety, of course, is that it's propaganda. How do you know it's propaganda? Because it's only telling Alec Baldwin's side of the story. It doesn't do what I'm going to do in the show, which is show you the hypocrisy of SAG. So let's look through this article. SAG-AFTRA. Let's see. Defends Alec Baldwin. Quote, an actor's job is not to be a firearms expert. Close quote. So according to SAG, Alec Baldwin has no responsibility for how he handles an actual firearm on a movie set. He can do whatever he wants. He even point it at a woman and mother without ensuring it's not loaded and firing the gun. By the way, this is the featured photo in the Variety magazine article talking about SAG defending Alec Baldwin, and his finger is on the trigger. I mean, this is where I got the background for my own thumbprint of today's show. There's the arrow, there's the finger, and what happened? Bang. Bang is what happened. SAG-AFTRA issued a statement yesterday, defending Alec Baldwin after the actor was indicted last week for involuntary manslaughter in the shooting death of Rust cinematographer Helena Hutchins. The union argued that Baldwin was not responsible for firearm safety. Remember that. Baldwin was not responsible for firearm safety. We'll see how easy that is to swallow when we look at SAG's own regulations on firearm safety. And that if the production rests on such a responsibility, that is an incorrect assessment of the actual duties of an actor on set. Quote, an actor's job is not to be a firearms or weapons expert, the union said. Performers trained to perform, and they are not required or expected to be experts on guns or experienced in their use. The industry assigns that responsibility to qualified professionals who oversee their use and handling in every aspect. How would an armorer, even a competent armorer, have prevented Alec Baldwin pointing this gun, the gun in his hand, what he knew to be a real gun, at Helena Hutchins and firing the gun? Is the armorer expected to, drop from the ceiling onto the actor? Baldwin was holding a gun during preparation for a scene when it fired. Listen to the passive voice. They didn't say when he fired it. The gun just miraculously fired itself. Baldwin was holding a gun during preparation for a scene when it fired, killing Hutchins and wounding director Joel Souza. Baldwin has said that he did not pull the trigger, though the prosecution's forensic experts concluded that the gun could only have been fired if the trigger was pulled. Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, the film's armorer, is set to go on trial next month on separate charges of involuntary manslaughter and evidence tampering. She mistakenly loaded a live round into Baldwin's gun, which should have contained only dummy rounds. To prove involuntary manslaughter in either case, the prosecution will have to show criminal negligence, a higher standard than the ordinary negligence that would apply in a civil case. To rise to the level of criminal conduct, the behavior must be reckless, wanton, or willful, not just careless. That's true. But if you're handling an inherently dangerous instrument like a firearm, there is no negligence, mere negligence. If a death results, it's always recklessness because of the inherently dangerous nature of the weapon. Everybody knows guns are deadly. In an interview with ABC News in December 2021, Baldwin said he had been trained not to point a gun at anyone and fire. Well, he did point the gun at someone. I would never point a gun at anyone and pull a trigger. That was the training that I had. Baldwin was initially charged in January 2023, but those charges were dropped 3 months later. SAG-AFTRA also came to the actor's defense at the time of the original charges, saying that the prosecution's theory was wrong and uninformed. Well, I've done a lot of blog posts explaining the prosecution's theory, and it is correct and legally sound. California passed a law last year that set training requirements for film armorers and codified set safety standards for firearm use. Why did they feel the need to do that? Prior to the legislation, the industry safety rules had been voluntary, and there was no requirement that armorers get training. The bill was the result of a compromise between the industry and the entertainment unions. Armorer Gutierrez Reed did not receive any formal training as an armorer before taking the Rust job, though her father, Thel Reed, is a veteran armorer. In her police interview, she also said she never saw the industry-wide safety bulletins that are supposed to be attached to the call sheets. The prosecutors on the original case also sought to hold Baldwin accountable as a producer for management lapses on set, in addition to alleged mishandling of the gun. The case has since been reassigned to two special prosecutors, Carrie Morrissey and Jason Lewis, who have not yet spelled out their theory of the case. Well, they did in the indictment. The theory of the case is involuntary manslaughter, two forms. One is engaging in a lawful act without due care and circumspection and taking someone's life. And the second is engaging in an unlawful act, here negligent use of a firearm, and someone's death results. And then the full SAG-AFTRA statement. So this is the SAG-AFTRA press release now. To the extent that the charges filed on January 19th are based on an accusation of negligent use of a firearm predicated on this or any actor having a duty to inspect the firearm as part of its use, that is an incorrect assessment of the actual duties of an actor on set. An actor's job is not to be a firearms or weapons expert. Firearms are provided for use on set under the guidance of multiple expert professionals directly responsible for the safe and accurate operation of that firearm. The industry standards for safety with firearms and use of blank ammunition are clearly laid out in Safety Bulletin 1, provided by the Joint Industry-Wide Labor Management Safety Commission. The guidelines require an experienced, qualified armorer to be put in charge of all handling, use, and safekeeping of firearms on set. These duties include inspecting the firearm and barrel before and after every firing sequence, and checking all firearms before each use. Well, there wasn't supposed to be a firing sequence, was there? This was a rehearsal. There was not supposed to be any firing happening. Alec Baldwin keeps saying he didn't pull the trigger. So he would be saying, I was pulling the trigger because it was a firing sequence, if that's what it was. But that wasn't the case. So this is all deflection. Last paragraph of the press release. The guidelines do not make it the performer's responsibility to check any firearm. Well, I can't wait to get to the guidelines. Performers trained to perform, and they are not required or expected to be experts on guns or experienced in their use. The industry assigns that responsibility to qualified professionals who oversee their use and handling in every aspect. Anyone issued a firearm on set must be given training and guidance in its safe handling and use, which Alec Baldwin was provided here and on dozens of other movie sets that he's been on where he handled guns. But all activity with firearms in a set must be under the careful supervision and control of the professional armorer and the employer. All right. Now let's take a look at the actual safety bulletin for handling guns from SAG-AFTRA, the bulletin that was in effect at the time that Alec Baldwin shot and killed Halyna Hutchins. As an actor, you are ultimately responsible for your own safety and the safety of your fellow cast members. Wait, I thought this wasn't Alec Baldwin's responsibility because he's an actor. Guideline continues. Production management and crew are responsible for creating and maintaining safe conditions, but it is your right and responsibility to double check the setup to ensure your own safety. You have the absolute right to say no to any stunt or scene you think might be dangerous. SAG contracts guarantee your right to refuse to perform any stunt or hazardous activity you even think might put you in danger. If you have doubts about the safety of any setup, say no and stick to it. Support your fellow performers who say no. If another actor or stunt performer says no to a stunt or hazardous activity, support that performer by providing the no behind the no. Don't ever be pressured or induced to take a chance with your safety. So Alec Baldwin can't credibly say, well, I was pointing the gun at Halyna Hutchins. I mean, he can't deny that. The bullet struck her, but I was doing it at her command. So to the extent it was risky, that was her responsibility. No, the guidelines tell you to not engage in dangerous conduct, even if someone else wants you to. All the recommendations contained herein are intended to conform with applicable laws and governmental regulations, and in the event of any conflict, applicable laws and governmental regulations will prevail. This goes directly to the pro-Alec Baldwin people who claim that, sure, if a non-actor engaged in this conduct, that would be involuntary manslaughter under New Mexico law, but it's different if an actor does it, as if there's something in the statute that exempts actors on a movie set from New Mexico statutory involuntary manslaughter law. There isn't. And even the Screen Actors Guild recognizes that if there is a conflict between any SAG guidelines and the law will prevail. So even if SAG said it's okay to engage in reckless conduct with a gun and kill someone, that's forgivable, that's not what controls. The actual criminal law controls. This is kind of small. Sorry about that. I don't have a good way to make it bigger, unfortunately. Let me see if I can do this real quick. Yeah. Specifically now to firearms and other weapons. This is SAG's guidelines, in effect, when Alec Baldwin killed Helena Hutchins. Quote, treat all weapons as though they are loaded and or ready to use. SAG's guidelines. Do not play with weapons and never point one at anyone, including yourself. Follow the directions of the property master and or weapons handler regarding all weapons. The use of firearms and other weapons may require special permits and or operator certifications. Anyone that will be using a weapon shall know all the operating features and safety devices. Operating features would include how to check if the gun is loaded. All weapons must undergo thorough safety inspection, testing, and cleaning on a daily basis by qualified personnel. Oh, I had it exploded here. Again, treat all weapons as though they are loaded and or ready to use. Do not play with weapons and never point one at anyone. That's the SAG guidelines. That's what they were telling everyone, all the actors, before Alec Baldwin found himself in hot water. Again, I left this. Did I blow this up too? Let me take a look. No. No one shall be issued a firearm until he or she is trained in safe handling, safe use, the safety lock, and proper firing procedures. That would include Alec Baldwin. And by the way, he was also a producer of this movie, so would have managerial responsibility for this as well. Refrain from pointing a firearm at anyone, including yourself. If it is absolutely necessary to do so on camera, consult the property master or, in his or her absence, the weapons handler and or other appropriate personnel determined by the locality or the needs of the production or other safety representative, such as the first AD stage manager. Remember that any object at which you point a firearm could be destroyed, including Helena Hutchins. Never place your finger on the trigger until you're ready to shoot. Keep your finger alongside the firearm and off the trigger. Repeatedly, we saw Alec Baldwin's finger on the trigger when he was not prepared to fire. Contrary contrary to SAG's own guidelines. There go the fire trucks. All local, state, and federal laws and regulations are applicable and can override these guidelines if they are more stringent. That would include New Mexico's law on involuntary manslaughter and what qualifies as reckless conduct, criminal conduct, reckless endangerment with a firearm. So even if SAG's guidelines said it was okay to point the gun at Helena Hutchins, which they do not say, and have your finger on the trigger, which is the opposite of what it says, that wouldn't matter because New Mexico's law on involuntary manslaughter would control. And again, these are all different sections of the guidelines, folks. So this is how much weight SAG put on these rules. They repeat them over and over and over again. General safe use and handling of firearms. Never point the firearm at anyone, including yourself. Never place your finger on the trigger until you are ready to shoot. Keep your finger alongside the firearm and off the trigger. And where, for those of you listening to the podcast, where it says never point a firearm at anyone, including yourself, the never point words are capitalized, bolded, and underlined. Where it says never place your finger on the trigger until you're ready to shoot, never place is capitalized, bolded, and underlined. Never point, never place. And those are all the slides. So that is what SAG actually tells and requires of actors on movie and TV sets. And that clearly places responsibility, even under SAG's own guidelines, for Helena Hutchins' death squarely on Alec Baldwin. Now, might there be other people who share liability for Helena Hutchins' death? Sure. Might Hannah Gutierrez-Reed deserve her own manslaughter sentence for allowing live ammo to be on set and whatever other errors she might have committed? Sure. But that doesn't relieve Alec Baldwin of his responsibility. If anything, I would expect Gutierrez-Reed's lawyers to be arguing the legal defense of intervening cause, that whatever mistakes Gutierrez-Reed made, they would have been harmless, but for the later intervening cause of Alec Baldwin pointing the gun at Helena Hutchins and pressing the trigger. If he had not done that, anything that Hannah Gutierrez-Reed would have done would have been inconsequential. But we'll see. I suppose she's going on trial next week. But again, that's completely independent of the liability of Alec Baldwin.